This is Nicole.
And this is Lenee, and this is live from 1985, the podcast. Welcome, y'all. Today we have a very good show for you. Our topic today, our main subject is going to be interracial dating. So we're going to dig really deep into that. In our Facts of Wives segment, we're going to be asking each other a couple questions regarding interracial dating. And in our cultural segment, which is A Million Opinions, we're going to be talking about Kim and Kanye, a very high known, very public guy and girl who happen to be in an interracial relationship. So ties right in. So let's get right into it. I'm very excited about today's show, and we're gonna get it popping today. Are you ready, Nicole?
I am. I want to give a quick altar call to everyone. The altar call is for all those who are interested in interracial dating. And I want to explain real quick what our altar call is. So the altar call is for those who have strong opinions about the subject that we're about to talk about. And it's a figurative way of us saying to those listening to the podcast, let us know how you feel. Come to the altar, let us know what you're thinking, how you feel, your viewpoint, your opinions. As we always say, hit us up in the inbox, on Instagram. So that's who our altar call is to. Those who have either been in an interracial relationship or in an interracial relationship or thinking about being in an interracial relationship. So yeah, our altar call are to those people out there.
Very nice, very nice. We always want to reach out, and we definitely want feedback and everything like that. But let's get into some conversation. So, Nicole, have you ever been in an interracial relationship?
I have not. I have had what the young kids are calling now entanglements. I was in the military before. So I have had what I would say, like, it wasn't a relationship, but I was sort of talking to someone for a very, very, very brief moment, very brief time. It was when I was overseas. And I almost don't count it as an interracial relationship or even entanglement because he was German. I'm sorry, I take that back. Let me retract that. I always think when people talk about interracial dating, the first thought that comes to people's head is black and white. Mm-hmm. So, or, Caucasian and, people of color. So, even though I know the Caucasians here in America come from European descent, there's still a big cultural difference between Europeans that are living there now and Caucasians that are living in America. So anyway, to the point, yes, I had a brief entanglement, very, very brief entanglement with a German guy when I was overseas. And mostly we just kicked it and hung out. And the reason why I wasn't very comfortable with it, because when we would hang out and chill, we didn't have anything in common. Absolutely nothing in common. We were learning about each other and we would learn about each other's cultures, but I would always think, if I ever dealt with you seriously, I just couldn't imagine myself being around your family or you being around my family, or, because my family get together, we talk shit. And it's nothing, I don't want to say it's anything racist, but we do talk about other cultures. And it's, then we have to be careful about what we say and things like that. But what really was kind of a cutoff for me was after we had, talked for a little while and he wanted to get quote unquote serious, he said something that was it turned me off. And he said, first, let me say this. Back then I was wearing weave. I was wearing micro braids. And I took the micro braids out. And of course, my hair was significantly shorter than the micro braids. And he was in shock and awe. He was just flabbergasted that we would do something like that. So that in itself was, I had to explain and break it down. Well, how do you attach it? And does it, all this stuff? And I'm like, oh my goodness. But after that, he was like, wow, you're so exotic. And I was like, excuse me? I'm not really, I wasn't really happy with that term exotic because I felt like an animal. I felt like you only approached me and wanted to sort of try to do something with me because of the fact I looked different and I had dark skin and et cetera, et cetera. So that was my only sort of situation that, and as a kid, let me say this, when I was in middle school and some of high school, I did talk to a few Hispanics, but again, it was nothing real serious. So the short end of that question is kind of a not really. So what about you? Have you ever been in an interracial relationship?
I haven't.
Okay.
So, I have had, I guess you could say, like a boyfriend when I was 16. We both worked at the same place. We would hang out and, he was fixing up a Mustang. We would go. But like you said, didn't really have anything to talk about. He actually thought my personality was like mean almost, but I was a joking type of person. I would just joke with him, but some of the jokes he, I guess, didn't like or didn't get, but he always got his feelings hurt. But, it just, to me, it wasn't a big deal. Like, I had been around other guys my age that were Black and we could joke that way and it was cool. But when it came to him, he was just a little bit more sensitive to, I guess, whatever I was saying. But it was never anything racially, it wasn't a racial joke. It would just be like, I can't even think of one of the jokes, but, just joking with him. And he was just like a bit more, he didn't really have a sense of humor, and it's like, we didn't laugh. I love to laugh. So we were just around each other. And it was just like, what else? He had cats. I was like, you have cats? Ew. Like he just lived a different life than me, but it wasn't bad. But I wouldn't really just count him as a boyfriend either. We dated very briefly. I was 16, and that's it. But other than that, as a grown woman, most guys that have tried to talk to me that were outside of my race were extremely older than me. And I don't really play that. I kind of stay within a certain age group. But I mean, these dudes were like old enough to be my dad or sometimes even granddad, like maybe when I was 20 something, they were like 50s and 60s, and it'd just be like ill. So I never have really. And I'm married, so I'm not going to,
Right.
It's over for me. But that kind of leads me into my next thing. What were you taught about interracial relationships growing up?
So we weren't, a little background. I grew up, and I think we've talked about this in some previous podcasts. I grew up with my father first. My parents divorced when I was very young. And I lived in a single father household for a while. And he never really talked about it, but he was very pro people of color, pro our people. Like I remember going into the stores and stuff, and I would see a doll. And back then I didn't know, being in the military family, my dad was in the military. We were always around a lot of different races all the time. So when we would go to the store and I would see a doll, whether it be any skin tone, I'd pick it up. But if I picked up a little like white doll, he'd be like, no, you can't have that. Get the one that looks like you. Get the dark one. He was very big on that. I had no white dolls, none. All my dolls were Black growing up. Baby dolls, Barbie dolls, everything. The only time we had a white doll was my brother had G.I. Joe. And G.I. Joe only came in one color. But besides that, but he never like, don't talk to them or don't, he never talked bad about them or anything. He just wouldn't let us play with those type of dolls. And we had friends, that were of a different race, and he never say anything about that either. So we weren't really taught about race or interracial dating. As a matter of fact, my brother's wife is Caucasian. So, again, we were never taught that it was a bad thing or don't do it. Now, my mom, on the other hand, which is a funny story, my mother's second husband was German and Mexican. He was, his father was Hispanic and his mother was German. But if you saw him, he just looked like a regular Caucasian guy. And my mother, I wouldn't call her racist, but she would, she gonna kick my ass if she ever sees this. She used the word cracker a lot. Peckerwood, things like that. That motherfucker Peckerwood, this, that cracker, and it's funny but the crazy thing is my stepdad at the time, he was, when he was my stepdad, he was kind of the same way. Like he wouldn't talk bad about his own people, but he was very pro people of color. Like he listened to jazz music. The only music that he listened to that wasn't our music was Elvis. He loved Elvis. But even he was like, Elvis was the one, he stole y'all's music. That's y'all's music that he stole. He was, and I'd be like, oh, okay, I guess. But again, she never told me not to date outside of my race. And she, even though she would use those terms, she would never down the race. A lot of times she would say those things when she experienced something out in the community or something happened to her that, I'm like, for example, one time we were out at the store and we were waiting at the beauty. My mom loved to wear makeup. We were waiting at like the counter or whatever. And the lady was the receptionist or, whatever was waiting on someone. And we were next. She looked right at us in our direction. She even like, just give me 1 minute. Another lady walked up, Caucasian lady walked up on the other side. As soon as she was done, she went to the other lady and just totally ignored us. And my mom was kind of like, and immediately that's when the words come out. I know that motherfucking Peckerwood cracker saw me sitting here. She would get pissed at that. So she would only use those terms when she, had some type of racial inequity happen to her. So, but anyway, to the point, as far as not dating outside of our race, they never told us not to. If anything, there was more just be careful. Be careful of who you date and their background, because you don't want to get with someone. It didn't matter what their skin tone was. They would just say, be careful, who you date. So what about you growing up? Were you ever taught not to date outside your race? Or
I was. So,
okay.
Not like if I did, it would become a problem or anyone would protest or anything like that. But my family was pro-Black. They were very much, if you can't use this comb, don't bring them home. They said shit like that, But my sister dated outside her race. We have mixed kids in our family. So it was just something that was said. It wasn't anything that was actually like held to us, like you have to obey this. But it was just like a something you said inside the home and it didn't leave the home. But like you knew, like, hey, you better be bringing someone chocolate home, something like that. Right. But I don't think anyone in my family really pushed us either way. You know what I mean? It was just really, you could date whoever you want. We were just kind of more taught of the person you want to find. But it was always important to me to be with somebody Black. And I've always been pro-Black relationships and, just dating inside your race. Now, if you don't, that's fine too. Everyone has their own choice, their own preference. I know there is a man shortage out here, and sometimes you do have to go outside your race to meet someone or to get married, or just because you fall in love with someone. I would never, ever knock that. But at the same time, it's just a different level of understanding that you have with a person who is the same as you. So that's the only reason why I'm like pro that, just for the experience of having someone who can walk through your shoes and know, really, what it is. And so, how do you feel about interracial dating?
So let me start off with this. I did a little bit of research. I tried to, because we use the word race, and race is actually a relatively newer term. Because race, and I want to make sure I say this correctly, the definition of race and what it means. So race is a categorization of humans based on shared physical or social qualities into groups generally viewed as distinct within a given society. So race is more of a social categorization. I think a lot of people see race as color, black, white. Unfortunately, black and white is what we use for, people of color and Caucasians. And then, we don't call Mexicans, well, some people call Mexicans brown, or Asians yellow, or people from India or West Indies tan, but 9 times out of 10, you don't say, hey, that tan guy over there that works at 7-Eleven, or whatever, or the yellow guy that came. We don't do that, but we will say that black guy and that white guy, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I will use it sometimes, but I'm actually trying to get it out of my vocabulary, because that's not what we are. Like this is black. I'm not this. Black is specifically a color, or some people will say it's a color that has all the colors, and white is the absence of color. But anyway, so I even looked up, ethnicity, nationality, cultural, but what it comes down to me is with genetics. So what I think about interracial dating is, first, there's a lot of genetic differences between us. And second, it is cultural differences between us. And that is where kind of race comes in, because where you grew up and your cultural background, there's a lot of differences. And the best way I can kind of explain it is, my brother, he's, I don't want to say the perfect example, but when we would go to, at the time they weren't married, but they were boyfriend and girlfriend, when we would go to her family's house, the cultural differences were, very big. They were very, I felt very, I don't want to say I felt uncomfortable, but I couldn't get all the way comfortable. Now I will say this, they did have some cultural similarities as far as when we would play games, my family drinks, her family drinks, things like that. The way they kind of interacted with each other, kind of have quarrels in the family and problems, things like that. I did, enjoy that, but the stuff that they talked about and kind of just how they carry themselves was very different. And I always felt myself holding back, and I wondered if they felt the same way. Like, I wondered if, they had to do the same thing. And I'll tell this story. One time we were over there, I think it was for Christmas, and, everybody's drinking and stuff like that. And this was very hard for me to deal with. The brother was talking about a story when their mother had a guy over, and he was like, yeah, mom had somebody in the house. I didn't know who it was. I thought somebody was, hurting her or something like that. Found out she was, sleeping with the guy, but I didn't know. So when I ran up, I had to get that nigger out of here. And I was like, the fuck? Now at the time, I don't know how old I was. I had to have been like 18 or 19. And I just did not know how to handle it. And in the minute he knew, like, he was like, oh shit.
Shouldn't have said that.
Right. And so the thing was, I thought he was talking about somebody like us, but he wasn't. It was one of them. So they call each other that. So then I think he kind of assessed the situation. He was like, well, shit, I said it now. So then he kept going. He was like, yeah, that nigger, he was upset. I had to get him out of there, and I'm like, I didn't know how to take it. And even my brother, he was like, he looked at me like, don't say shit, just keep it together. He's drunk, and I get it. I got it. But let me tell you something. And the only reason why I think in that moment, I can't speak for my brother. I can't speak for him. I don't want to know. I don't know. We never talked about it after that. Like, it was never brought up. And I don't want to speak for him. But I think in the moment, he's like, it's a bunch of them and it's two of us. Just don't say, because it was just me and him with all of her family.
Yeah.
You know, so we were just like, he just kind of looked like, don't say nothing. It's cool. He's drunk. He's tripping. He's not trying to be mean it in a derogatory way or anything like that. But the first thing that clicked in my head is, they do sit around and say this. And not only do they say it, they call each other that, you know? And I was just, it was really another turnoff, you know, because now granted, like, again, my mom, she used the term peckerwood, crackerwood, but she never called, like, hey, you little peckerwood, you know, she never called me that or called one of our people that. So it was kind of discombobulating to hear him refer to one of their own, because you're using it in a derogatory way about one of your own people, which is what kind of turned me off. You're trying to say that this person was so low or so whatever that you called them a nigger. So I had to sit on that for a long time. And again, that was kind of that thing where, like, I can't, because then I don't know how many times my brother has been in that situation and had to deal with that. Maybe that was the only time, maybe, I don't know. But I can't sit around, and because you're outnumbered, you can't say anything, you know, because you don't know what's going to happen. And maybe nothing will happen. Maybe you can say, hey, man, I don't appreciate you saying nothing like that. And maybe they will be like, oh, okay, my bad. But you don't know. And that's another one of those deep fears, is I wouldn't even feel comfortable speaking up saying, hey, don't say that shit, because I feel like y'all might be like, F you, and, you know, who knows what. So
see,
anyway.
My thing with the N-word is that it's a trigger word for us. And I feel like it shouldn't be. We got to take the power away from that word in the case of it being a trigger word. Because how many people are in jail right now or have lost their life because someone said that word and it went too far? You know, we can't get that upset when we hear that, especially if we're going to keep allowing our rappers and our R&B singers and our culture, our music, to say it in their music. You think these kids ain't singing this when they're at home? They are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it just gives them a feeling of, I can use that word. Not Eminem, but like Snoop Dogg is using it, and you know, this rapper is using it. Lil Wayne say it. How come I can't say it? He's my favorite rapper. I'm just rapping the song. And that, it sounds like, okay, well, saying it in the song and saying it when you're mad is different, but it's not. The word is the word, you know, and people are going to use it when they're trying to set you off, which we can't get set off by it. I'll give an example. One time I was living in Corpus Christi, and we were leaving a club. It was me, my homegirl, Sheena, and another one of my homegirls named Valerie. Valerie is Hispanic. Sheena's black, I'm black, right? So we're leaving the club. We're just walking out. There's these 3 white girls. They're walking in front of us. The girl in the middle is so drunk. Both of her friends are holding her on each side. And she's like, can barely even keep her body together. You know what I mean? So we walk past them and we laugh because she's struggling to get to her car. You know what I mean? So we're just laughing. We're having a good time. So she yells out, niggers. And my heart started to race, but at the same time, I was like, girl, you're not about to get me, because you're drunk. And if I decide to go fight you, guess who's going to jail? Guess who's getting a case pressed on them? Guess who now has to fight in court for assault charges and all of that? Not me. But my friend Valerie, the Hispanic girl, was ready to take this chick out. You know what I'm saying? She didn't care. She was about that life. But I was like, girl, no, it's not worth it. If we go fight these girls because they said a word to us, what is that going to leave us? You have 3 kids at home. We can't fight this girl over that word. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, we have to get to a point and realize that they're going to say it, and they're going to say it to try to hurt us. But we can't let it. We have to keep it moving, all get on the same page that we're either going to say it and everybody's going to say it, or we're not going to say it. I feel like as long as we're in this middle ground, how can we be mad at another race for saying it? When we say it, we call each other it. They don't get why they can't say it. And that's where I'm at with that word.
I agree to a certain extent. You know, I agree. The one thing I do very much agree with is we're in a middle ground, you know, where all of us do need to get on accord, which is going to be a very, very difficult thing. I'd like to tell people, learn the etymology of the word, learn where the word came from. You know, words have power, they have energy, but knowing the origination of that word, you learn where that power comes from. And if you look up the word negut, now I've seen two different types of etymologies. I'm just going to go off the one I've researched the most. So I don't want anybody to take this for as what it is. Do your own research. But I looked up the word, and it goes back to the word negus, Negus, if anybody wants to look that up. And negus literally means king. You know, it was a very endearing word. It was, I think it's, I don't want to say Ethiopian, but it means a king or a kingdom, you know, and it did originate from people of color. And that's what they called us. Oh, those people who rule this and rule that. And it was turned derogatory. So there was a point where I can't remember which rapper, but they said, yeah, we should be using this word in a positive form. My nigga, you know what I'm saying? And they didn't want them to use it because it was their ancestors who started using it in a derogatory way. I'm the type of person, I don't want to hear you using it.
I agree now with that. I don't want to hear it. See, I don't mind nigga. I don't like nigger. Nigga is fine with me. I say nigga. You know what I'm saying? But if someone is around me and says nigga, I'm not really the one to check them, because I just look at it like, okay, that's something you say.
And I agree with that part. I agree. You know what got me not liking the word nigga? My oldest son's father calls him nigga. Hey nigga, hey nigga. And when he started saying that, I'd be like, stop calling him that.
Yeah.
You know, and it wasn't in a derogatory way, but he wasn't saying, hey bro, you know,
yeah,
hey son. He was saying it when he was pissed.
No, it sounds very slave mastery.
Right. So that's why I say I stopped using the word. That's like bitch, you know, it's very much like bitch. Like I have friends that and I said it, I'm guilty of saying both words, but I remember growing up being with some friends and bitch, you know, but then let a dude, man, you ain't nothing but a bitch. Oh, then it's like, oh, hell no, you ain't calling me no bitch, but we calling each other, your friends are calling each other bitch.
Yep, I'm that girl. Yep.
Yeah, so that I'm with you where everybody should not say it or should say it or use it in the context that it is really meant to be. If you're going to call me a nigga, call me a negus, call me a king, call me the ruler of whatever I own. Or if you're going to call me a bitch, then you're referring to me as a female dog.
Right.
You know, so if you a woman calling me a bitch or if you're a dude calling me a bitch, to me, you're calling me a female dog. And it's the same with the word nigga, but this is also the context that they're giving it. You know, if they're giving it in a derogatory way, there's no way you can, and I agree with you. I'm not saying go fight somebody over it, but it's just, I agree with you where we either should all be using it or not using it. And if we're using it, only use it in the context that
exactly. If we're going to call each other kings and big each other up that way and use the word, then why are we mad at other races for saying it if that's the meaning of the word that we want it to be? But if we're going to say it and just use it as a slang word, we cannot be mad at other races for saying it. That's all I'm saying, right. Especially if it's in the music. You want these people to come to your concerts and be your fans and sing your songs. You think they're going to stop at that word? To me, it doesn't make any sense. And they feel the same way. And that's why I feel like they're more empowered to say it. Because it's like, oh, you think I can't say it? I am going to say it. You're just not going to know about it. But I'm going to have these feelings and I'm going to be saying it anyway. I feel like if you're going to say it in front of my face. Let me know that you say it. What you hiding it for? Because then it starts to be like, why are you hiding it? you know?
But they hide it because they feel like they're not allowed to say it. You know, here's one more story. So I had a friend that came over. We were co-workers. We ended up becoming kind of friends. She was a young Caucasian girl. And the funny thing is, it was me, her, and then we had another friend, and she was a girl who was mixed. Her father was a person of color. She was one of us, or he was one of us, and then her mother was Caucasian. So it was me, her. I'll just call the white girl's name was C, and the mixed girl's name was L, right? So we're all sitting around chilling, and she's like, "Have you ever seen that Chris Rock episode of, she's talking about the comedian, and she says the line, and she's like, yeah, y'all niggas, blah, blah. And I'm like, and now I know all she was doing was referencing a line in a comedic show, but it's just something in me. I didn't get mad at her. I didn't say anything, but it's just something that stopped. Like, did she just really say that? Did she just, and it's, the first thing I thought was, okay, she's comfortable enough to say this around me, to think that, it's not a conversation that you have, hey, is it okay if I say this word around you? But she obviously felt, okay, Nicole is cool enough for me to say this around her. And I didn't say anything. I just kind of let it ride, but it was something in me that made me kind of stutter step and be like,
that stung a little bit.
Yeah, like, should you be saying that? Yeah, it did. She wasn't trying to be derogatory. But it's just that societal way we have thinking, like, you people can't say this because your ancestors used to use it in a very derogatory way. So I don't know. I don't know how to solve that problem. I'm not the type of person like, y'all can't never say it and, blah, 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 because we are talking about time has passed or whatever. But again, I say, if you're going to use it in the sense of what it really means. Give it the power that it's supposed to have.
That is very true. So we kind of got into a little cultural conversation, but what I want to know is, how do you feel cultural appropriation affects relationships?
This one, because I have such my views have actually recently kind of changed on cultural appropriation. I was in where was I at? I was at, what is the name of that? Wingstop. I'm sorry, I was at Wingstop, and I've got locks. My hair is locked. And I was in there waiting for my food, and there was a young lady that came in. She was, a woman of color. She was a little bit lighter than me. And she went up to the counter and ordered her food. Her hair was, I don't know 100% for sure, but it looked like it was relaxed, and she had it pulled back in a ponytail, and it looked like it was, kind of short. So she didn't say anything to me. I didn't say anything to her. But another young lady walked in, and she looked like some type of Asian descent, but I don't want to say Chinese or Japanese, but more like maybe even Thai or something like that, because her skin was a little bit darker. She kind of had olive skin. But she had locks, and her locks were like down to her butt. And if when you see a person with really, really straight hair that has locks, they have to do a lot to it to get it to lock up. Their hair doesn't naturally lock. They have to add stuff. I don't know. I've watched the video before. They got to do all types of use tools and stuff. And then the front, the hair that grows in, like when we have new growth, they don't have their hair just, it just comes in straight. So she had like bangs, like really straight, dark black bangs, and then locks in the back. And the first young lady that came in, she like stops and stares and looks, and she walks up to her and she was like, oh my God, is that your hair? And she's like, yes, it's mine. I've been growing it for 7 years, and I've been taking care of it. And she's like, oh my, I love it. I thought it was maybe something extension or something, but that's your hair. That's cool. I love that. And I'm sitting there like, I'm not gonna lie, that shit pissed me off. That shit pissed me off. And I'm not saying that it's because you didn't give me any. I'm over here. I'm you, sis. I'm you. Me and you the same. We come from the same thing. And I'm not saying that. Here's what pissed me off. It's not because she didn't say anything to me. It's because when she looked at me, she gave me a look like, yeah, her hair. I'm like, no, bitch. No. I'm sorry. There's that big word. No.
She wanted the cosign, like.
Yeah, like look, she's got locks like you. Nah, son. No, this is not cool. I don't, now again, I'm not knocking her for, to me, that's cultural appropriation in the sense of, we do this because this is the way our hair kind of naturally grows. If you were to never do anything to your hair, never comb it, never do anything, it would lock up. It would, point blank, period, unless you have really, really, really loose curls. But even then, your hair would still lock up. But it has more meaning to it. I tell people again, when you look at the biology of things, your hair is an extension. It's part of your integumentary system. It's part, like your hair and your nails both have keratin in it. It's an extension of you. So it's deeper than just, oh, that's just something we did or something we made up. No, this is something that we used long ago as a part of who we are and a part of the way we lived. Our hair was very much a part of how we navigated through life. Even when I did my own research and my own native, my indigenous to American background and history, we kept our hair long because we used it to hunt and do things like that. Even my husband has really long locks. Anyway, so, but I can't say much because guess what? It's a whole bunch of women going around relaxing their hair or wearing long, straight weaves, which that's not what their hair naturally is. So we do cultural appropriation too, and there was one point, there's been one time in my life, I had a quick weave. I didn't like it, but I was, flicking it and stuff like that. And I had a relaxer at one point in time too. So technically to me, that's a type of cultural appropriation. I had to chemically manipulate my hair to look like something it naturally wasn't. Yeah. But so I don't know what I don't know the answers, should we just stop? Me personally, I did. I stopped getting relaxers, definitely stopped wearing weave. Because I feel like that wasn't me. That wasn't who I was. This is me. This is how my hair is. I don't have to hardly do anything to it. But go ahead, because I don't know. I'll keep going. What do you think about it? What's your take?
So, cultural appropriation. The only time it bothers me is when men date women that look like Black women but don't date Black women. That drives me crazy because it's kind of like you want the culture but not someone who's of the culture. And then my other thing with cultural appropriation is, what is our culture? Like, what is it? I understand that Black women naturally have an ass and naturally have hips and thighs and everything like that, and people want it. But as far as, like, let's say the dreads, or something like that. Well, that's actually a cultural thing too. I'm trying to think of something that they take that's not necessarily from our lineage or something like that, but at the same time, we really don't even know what that is. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of us are we don't know where we come from. So it's hard for us to really just claim something and say, that's ours, other than the culture of hip hop. You know what I mean? Like, hip hop culture. Is that our culture? Are we Africans? Is African culture our culture? Is American culture our culture? Like, what is the culture?
We don't know where our culture came from. It was stolen from us. And now we're at a point where, like you said, where, like I was saying, I did my own kind of background, and I know that I do have indigenous to American culture, but as much research as I've done, I can never trace it back to Africa. So I'm always questioning that. And I'm not one of those people like, this is where we're from. But I do question it. I do question the whole, like, and this dude, Dan Calloway, you got to check him out, because the one thing he had, I forgot what museum or what website, and I this is my fault for not getting this information prepared. But if you check him out, you know, he'll let you know. He had it changed where during the transatlantic slave trade, they had it like in the millions, from 16 something to, you know, 18 something. I don't know the exact years, but they had over 1 million slaves. You know, I think it was like 5 or 6 million slaves were transferred from Africa to here. It's changed now because he actually did the research. He did the footwork where it was more in the hundreds of thousands. If you look at the census that they were doing when they started the census and the amount of quote unquote slaves that were here, it was in the 20s of millions. You know, it was, or even close to hundreds of millions. So you can't bring, you know, even when they were saying 1 million slaves, like and I'm just keep the number simple. Let's say they brought a million slaves over here between, you know, over a period of 50 years. Then all of a sudden the population boomed to like hundreds of millions of slaves. You know what I'm saying? Like, where are all these other slaves? Plus, when they talk about the translate, at least from what I remember, even in class, oh, when they brought the slaves over, there were slaves jumping off ships. They were killing them because they had them all down in the bottom of the boat and in sardines. You know, they would lose half of their cargo because of the, you know, horrendous living situation that they had them in. So you start off with 100, and by the time you get over to the Americas, you got 35. You know, or even if you had 65, you're still losing a large percentage of the amount of slaves that you had. And the numbers just didn't add up. So I'm definitely not saying that they weren't bringing people from Africa to here. But the one thing I like to point out to people is not all people with dark skin are from Africa. Just like you cannot look at all Asians who have slanted eyes and long dark hair are Asian. You know, there are some that are from Hawaii. You know, there are some that are from Indonesia. Hell, I've been to, when I deployed and I went to this place called Kyrgyzstan, that's more sort towards the Southwest Asia, more like almost towards India, Pakistan, places like that. They looked Asian, you know, but it's like just because they're from, you know, not all Japanese, Chinese, Thai, not all of them want to be lumped in one thing. It's the same for us. And that's what people tend to do. And I don't like that. You know, Hispanics, Latinos, Puerto Ricans, they're not all one thing. They're all different types of cultures and races, but we don't give ourselves that credit. We're automatically like, oh, if you got dark skin, you Black. You know, if you go to Africa, they're not like, that's another thing. All Africans aren't the same. Africa is a whole entire continent. There's hundreds of countries over there. You know, people from Ghana, Nigeria, people from Ghana and people in Nigeria see them as the Congo, they're like two totally different things. Just because they're from the continent of Africa doesn't mean they have the same culture or they're not just Black. That's kind of why I don't like that term Black, because it's a term that they use to clump us all together and just, you know, y'all just this. Now, but what I do agree with you is I do see Black maybe as a culture. So the hip hop culture or swagger, you know, how we got the sagging pants or even jazz that turns to R&B, that turned to hip hop and all that. So I think it's kind of a culture that we did create just kind of from different places that we did originally come from. We kind of melded it into this now American person of color culture. But again, it's stuff we made up. That's ours that they take, especially the rapping. The biggest one is rapping, you know, and it's not just Caucasian. I've seen these videos with like Japanese and, you know, and they're rapping and I'm like, it looks weird, but I just think, damn, we're so cool. There's people around the world trying to do what we do. I don't try to do what Japanese people do, or I mean, I don't want to say that's going to be very, let me not even say that, but it kind of gives me cultural appropriation, gives me a little bit of empowerment because I'm like, damn, we're so damn cool that everybody around the world is always trying to do what we do or be or look like us. Like you said, from the big butt to the big hips to the big lips, you know, the big hair, even that. And that's not even cultural, that's genetics. You know, people are doing these BBLs and stuff to look like us. But I don't know, I just really like the point that you made that we kind of don't even know our true culture. We have, to me, it's important to still try to figure that out and not just kind of, you know, I think it's important for everybody to do their own lineage. So anyways, I've rambled. You know, I get to rambling. I get to rambling.
So, why do you think people choose to date outside their race?
This one's a very difficult one. I don't know. I don't know. I can infer. I can guess and assume and presume. I used to wonder about that with my brother, you know, because my brother, before he got married, he only dated, you know, women of color. He only dated as far as I know. I will say that. I don't know everybody he's ever dated, but the only people that I saw him date before he got with his current wife was our people. And the only thing I can think, again, I don't know all of his personal life details, but there was a few women that really did him dirty. You know, they really did him dirty. And I will give his wife credit for this. She has been the person that has been his rock. You know, she has been there through thick and thin, through everything. She follows him everywhere. She's, you know, she's just been there 100%. No matter what they've been through, she's been there and she's supported him and she's pushed him and she's always making sure that whatever he's going for, even if she disagrees with it, she, you know, pushes him to be the best that he can be, which I didn't see that too much in our women. Unfortunately, in our women, it was more like, what can you do for me and what can I get from you? You know, so in my mind, I saw that, you know, he was like, why deal with these women who are either only trying to get something from me or figuring out what I can do for them, whether I can get this girl who's just pushing me to be the best person that I can be. So I give my sister-in-law credit for that. She still was very, you know, she can be a little mouthy. You know, she could clap back, and she's a very assertive kind of A-type personality. So he still had to deal with that part, you know, being loud and kind of talking down to him and stuff like that. But she was still very supportive of him no matter what, which I think, unfortunately, our women kind of lack sometimes. Some of our women, not all of our women. But like I said, the relationships I saw him in, a lot of the women didn't push him to do the best that he could like she did. A lot of men, I think it's, you know, I don't want to say a form of self-hate, but it is. So for example, when I was growing up, since I'm not super dark skinned, but I'm, like they say, I'm darker than a brown paper bag type deal. So I dealt with a lot of negativity from other dark skinned boys. You know, and it wasn't real bad, but it was just, they would prefer lighter skinned girls and they didn't like dark skinned girls. So my options were lighter skinned boys or Caucasian boys, which I, you know, being real young, you don't really, you don't date and stuff. It's kind of just like a little flirting and stuff like that. But I would only presume that maybe they had to go through the same thing. You know, maybe there were some boys that were like my husband, he's really dark. He said he had to go through people calling him, you know, your little piece of coal, your tar baby, you know, things like that. And he was like, it was just, he was so attracted to dark skinned women. He just couldn't, you know, he couldn't see himself with a Caucasian woman, or he rarely dated that many light skinned women. But there are some men who went through that and just maybe couldn't handle it. Like going through our women calling, he was like, it was only women. It wasn't men calling him this. It was women calling him tar baby and you ugly black thing and this and that and the other. That eats on your, you know, how how you feel about
your
yourself.
Self-esteem.
Your self-esteem. So that's why I said I don't want to say self-hate, but it's almost a form of that, because it's the experiences that you went through, you know. And you know, I've heard some men, and only on like YouTube videos and stuff, where I've seen guys like, well, I only date these type of women because all our women are loudmouths and are too aggressive and are too self-righteous and are too proud and, you know, things like that. And I have to say, our women we're very strong-minded, you know. You know, it all goes back to kind of our previous conversation. It's okay to be a little vulnerable and submissive. I'm not saying you have to sacrifice being strong and proud, but there are some instances where, you know, be a little vulnerable, be a little bit more soft, you know, things like that. Always support your man no matter what. Because a lot of these other women and a lot of the other races of women do that more than we do. So why do you think that there's the races date outside the race?
Sometimes I think it's about money. And I say that because sometimes I feel like Black people feel financially lower than other races. But I feel like when they get with I don't want to say just a white person, but with a person of a different race, because there's a lot of other races that can get loans and just different things easier or better, higher credit, and maybe not even necessarily that they worked on their credit, but maybe their parents knew to put them on credit when they were younger. So at 17, they have an 850 credit score, whereas this person over here, their parents didn't, and they're just not set up the same way. You know what I mean? I don't want to make it seem like this person has great credit and they work for it and this person just didn't. Sometimes people are set up differently. So I feel like when a person sees that, they want it, they admire it, and therefore are attracted to that, you know, a more financially free thing, especially if you feel like you're caged in this credit bubble, or, you know, you feel like you're being racially discriminated over here when it comes to finances, and this person isn't. It's kind of like, well, now I can use, you know, what you got to kind of. Now, I don't know that for a fact. I just think that's a reason why people might do it is just for like financial gain, or they feel like they could have more if they're with this other person from a different race other than, you know, someone of the same race, or especially, you know, Black people. I just feel like.
But you're actually right. If you do some of the research, so you'll find out that a lot of immigrants that come to this country from other countries, it's much more easier for them to get land, loans, grants, free college, free healthcare. I mean, talk about the stuff that's handed to them. You know, it's handed to them. Now, so I look at it like this. You have people, you know, melanated people, our people who were here, and first of all, we built this country. You know, I don't care. We built this country. And we're not giving anything. We're not giving anything. And I tell people, again, do your research, do your research. Don't just take my word. You know, that chick Nicole on there, that's what she was saying. Go look at that. They do give out reparations. They do give out reparations. It's just not to us. They give it out to immigrants, you know. But you're right. So you have us, we're here, we get what you call welfare. We get taxpayer money, a certain fund of taxpayer money or pool of taxpayer money. But any immigrant that wasn't born here, that comes here, aside from, if I'm not mistaken, Mexico, but a lot of other immigrants that come here, but even people from Mexico get certain types of special treatment too. But anyway, any immigrants usually from certain parts of Europe, certain parts of Asia, certain parts of India, even certain parts of South Africa, they get special handouts. Their schooling is a lot cheaper, sometimes free. They get so much stuff. And then you have the Caucasian people that have been here, that their ancestors worked on our backs, who have generational wealth. So you're right. In a sense, we're in it's this misappropriated funds, the different levels of socioeconomic status, where unfortunately we are here. That's just where it is. Most of our people, let's just use simple numbers. Let's say, we were talking about this the other day, the average guy from our culture makes 40 grand a year, $40,000. Our women maybe make 60,000. The average Caucasian man is averaging at what, $70,000-$80,000, probably more than that, maybe $100,000, and their women might be just below that, maybe 80, 90. The financial inequity is not as big as they make it seem. I tell you that much.
Yeah,
their women on average maybe make around 80 to 90, and their men maybe make 100, maybe a little bit more on average. And then you have all the other races. The only other race that may be down kind of where we're at is the Hispanic culture. I want to say specifically Mexicans. But again, so you're right. When, let's just say, one of our men, they may see that, and I don't want to use this term like that, but they may see it as a come up. They may see that, well, this woman is already established. She's already got a good credit score. She has no worries. She has no financial, difficulties. If I get with her, I know I'm going to succeed. And we've heard that, unfortunately, from a lot of comedians, but it's true. They like, I'm gonna get with the white chick because she got good credit. She pay her bills on time, blah, blah, blah. But we were at the start. We were in a race. We're like, 300 meters behind everyone.
Right.
And that's really messed up. But I really like how you say that even our men that are a lower socioeconomic status may date other women to get ahead. But even our men that have kind of reached that point, again, I kind of hate to say this, but my brother, he's in a much higher tax bracket than most of our men. His wife is a lawyer. And guess what? He is dating up. And there's not a lot of women in our culture that are making as much as him. That pool is small, but there's a much more wider pool of other races that are making the type of money that he's making.
Right. So, and you know what? I also feel like sometimes when they go to a different race, it's a status thing. And I watched this show called Blind Date. I think it's called Blind Date, but they put these people in pods and they make them date each other through a wall. And then when they find out they like each other, someone has to propose. And then after you propose, you can meet each other. Then you have to go live in the real world together, but your wedding is in 1 month. In 4 weeks, you're getting married. But you could say yes or no at the altar, whatever. It's a show that's on Netflix. So there's a couple on there, and they're both Indian. Neither one of them, the guy or the girl, has ever dated another Indian person. They refer to themselves as brown on the show, as brown people. So neither one of them said they have dated anyone of their own culture. So they ended up choosing each other in the pods. So when they go into the real world, he feels like being with her is like being with a family member, or like, a sister or something like that. But when he goes to her family, they love him, they understand, they have the cultural food. When she goes to his family, same thing. Like when they go to each other's family, like it's nothing but love. They both come from very similar families. In your head, you would be like, this is such a match, but neither one of them had ever dated that culture, and they had only dated white people. Like they both like blonde hair, blue eyes. That's their type. So the girl kind of was falling in love with him, but he ended up not falling in love with her because he was holding himself back, saying that he couldn't get sexually attracted to her. But what I really think it is that he didn't have that status symbol. He was a dude who, I have to have my body in perfect, my car's got to be perfect, my place got to be perfect, I got to have the best place, all the money, I got to be on top of everything. So to have this Indian girl that was perfect for him, he couldn't do it because she wasn't that status symbol of this blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl that he'd been, dating in the past. Like, he couldn't make it past that. So when I think about that, it's not even just Black men, because I feel like Black men are the number one race we think of. When we think of dating outside of their race, we think of Black men. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
not just Black men. It's a lot of other men that look at different women as a status symbol. Like, if I got this woman, like, and I think, finances are rolled into that too. But I think some of that is what it is. Now, when I say women dating the other race, I don't really know. That's what, maybe you couldn't find anyone that you liked in your own race. I'm not sure, because I know there's way less Black women who are willing to date outside their race, but the ones that do, I don't know what makes them do that.
You know what? I have a friend. I meant, you know what? And this is my fault. I meant to ask her. I kind of asked her before, but she didn't get real too deep into it. And it was similar to kind of like what I thought my brother, why he chose to do what he did. But so she had a child, and it was with, somebody of her own culture. She's a little bit lighter skinned than me. And she has a beautiful, beautiful, dark skinned girl, beautiful. But anyway, so she had a really, really bad experience with this guy, like a really bad experience with him. And she left it at that. And every other person after that she's dated has been white, has been Caucasian. And I kind of asked about that, and she didn't say exactly because he was, a person of color and treated me crappy, that's why. But it's almost kind of like that's what she alluded to, that every person that she met, she had a really bad experience with. And she thought, why not date out, So sometimes I feel like when our women do it, it is because of the bad experiences that they've had. It's not necessarily, like you said, men maybe do it for status, or unfortunately, that, oh man, it infuriates me to have the perfect woman, blonde hair, blue eyes, as the status symbol. But yeah, I think with our women, it's more of just really, really bad experiences. Like here's some women who have really bad experiences, and they're like, I'll go, pitch for the other team. Then you have some women who go lesbian because they've had such bad experiences with men.
That's true. So my thing is, why are we not talking to the men? Like Kevin Samuels has this conversation that he leads for the women, but I feel like where's the accountability for the men? Because sometimes it really just do be them, especially these $40,000 men that he's telling these high money making women to marry, right? Because he's saying there's only this small pool of this high earning men, so y'all are going to be left with these $40,000 men. Are you having conversations with them? Because they be tripping. Okay, not all of them, don't get me wrong. Jeff definitely not trying to knock a Black man on his thing, trying to get his thing together, or any man who's just trying to get his stuff together. A $40,000 man is fine, but some of them come with this baggage. Some of them want a mother, some of them don't want to leave the $40,000. They're okay with just that. It's only, prices are only going up. Eventually you're going to have to, try to make something work. So there's that pool of men that I feel like I want to hear from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's always these girls who are having these horrible experiences. There's a dude on the other side of that. I want to know what's up here with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyways, so how do you feel about interracial dating and children?
This is the real sort of, for me, kind of like the bread and butter of the issue of the matter. A lot of people don't think about the kids, and I found this out from my own experience with, I was working at, when I was working for the state, working for the Department of Human Services, I met this young lady who was mixed. Now, back then, I used a different term that I didn't know was derogatory. Me and a couple of my, this was back when I used, bitch and nigga. And I would call people that were mixed half-breeds. I would call them half-breeds or Africans. And it was more half-breed than anything. But anyway, so I met this young lady.
Girl, I thought you was gonna say mulatto. I was like, no, you didn't.
Oh no, I wasn't saying no mulatto. I was saying half-breed. And I didn't see nothing wrong with it. I really didn't. I thought I just didn't see anything wrong with it.
Did you think they referred to themselves as that?
No. Of course I knew they didn't, but it just didn't click in my head that it was derogatory, and I should have thought that. They're not referring to themselves as this, so why should I? Mm-hmm. It just didn't click. But we were at her house and we got on this topic. Her sister was there. She has 2 sisters, I think it's 3 of them, and they're all mixed. Their father was, Black and their mother was white. And I kept saying that, half-breed this and half-breed that. And she was finally like, why are you using that? Why are you saying that? I'm like, saying what? She's like, I'm not a dog. And I was like, oh, shit. I was like, I was just speechless. I felt so horrible because I wasn't meaning it in a derogatory way. I was literally trying to say somebody of mixed race. I was just using the term half-breed. Yeah. And that's where that's why sometimes I give some other races or some other culture some grace, because when you are truly ignorant of something, you don't know when you say something how it's affecting people. So anyway, I apologize. I'm like, I was not trying to be derogatory. That's something we used. My little group of friends, we would say that. We had, at the time, we got it from one of the guys. He was mixed and we would call him half-breed. Yeah. He'd be like, yeah, I'm a half-breed, blah, blah, so I just kept using it. But anyway, I didn't know, she said, one sister said one thing and one sister said the other, because we got on the topic of race. And we talked about what would happen if there was a race war. And she's like, what would you want to happen? I said, well, one drop of our blood, you one of us. She's like, so I'm supposed to just leave my mom out in the dust? She's like, I'm not going to do that. I love my mom. People put us in a really difficult position. And to me, I think, no, people don't. Your parents did, but I didn't say that, but that your parents chose to get together and put you in this position. And she said that. She's like, if a race war breaks out, I'm not just going to disown my white family or disown my Black family. And it's kind of fucked up. It's kind of messed up because I'm stuck in the middle. I can't choose this. I literally can't choose a side because I am mixed with both. And I never thought about that. But I think people don't think about that. I think people they just think about how they feel in the moment, people they love. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Like, yeah, love who you love, but know how it's going to affect your children. And race war was kind of a extreme example, but even with what's going on today, with the whole, shootings of Black kids and even my little brother, my little brother is mixed with, my mom's Black and his father is Hispanic and German. So he's really, 3/4 of some things, a third of, a third Black or half Black, a quarter Hispanic, whatever. Don't disregard my math. But anyway, the point is he had to deal with that. He was too light to be Black and too dark to be white. And then where we grew up in Texas, or where he mostly grew up, he looked Hispanic. So a lot of times people will come up to him and the Hispanics will come up to him, hey, let's talk to him in Spanish. He's like, nah, son, I'm not Hispanic. And even he had to deal with that. So I can't imagine, in his mind, what that's like. And I've talked to him a little bit and he, for him, he does gravitate more towards our people because of the culture, because he just kind of has that way about him. But it's still difficult because he can't deny his genetics. You know,
Right.
he can't deny what's in his blood. And I think the way the climate is today, just because of all of everything that's going on, you just have to be really careful when you have a child that's of mixed race. You have to think about what they have to go through in their lifetime, not just their childhood, but growing up where colorism is still a thing. And no, it's not in your face. I know we had a brief talk about back in the day, you were getting spit on and stuff like that, but it's still out there. You know, it's still, you go somewhere, and I still experience, perfect example, this is my last story. I had a friend, she's a lighter skinned than me, and we all went on a camping trip. It was her and me and my husband. We all went camping. We were in this, we had to stop and get gas. We were in this really small town where I can tell there was none of us. It was just a bunch of Caucasians. We were joking, but we were getting ready to go to the store. We was like, you need to go in first because you're a little bit lighter than us and you'll be accepted a little bit more. And it's fucked up, but it's true. Because she walked in and they kind of looked, and it was like, you know, she can't pass for white, but she's pretty fair. You know, she's pretty fair. So they kind of looked at her and didn't really think anything. If anything, they probably thought she was mixed. But as soon as me and my husband walked in, it was like, you know, listen to the record stop, like, what y'all doing here? You know what I'm saying? And I told her, I said, I swear it's because we were with you that it was almost acceptable for us to be in this damn store, because they watched us the entire time. But when she first walked in, they kind of looked, but then they just kept on doing what they were doing. But as soon as me and my husband walked in, like, they just gawked at us like we were, like they had never seen anything like us before. So, you know, colorism still exists. You know, racism still exists. So you just have to be careful when you bring kids into it and you're introducing them to this type of society. There's nothing you can say to them that's going to prepare them for what they have to experience individually, whether you're white or you're Black.
Right. And especially if you're Black, because we kind of live in a different time where it doesn't matter if you're light skinned, something could still racially happen to you just because you're Black. So it is very important. I kind of think about, let's say there's a couple that has, you know, a baby. Let's say the mom's Black and the dad is white. If one of the parents were to pass away, let's say the Black parent passed away, how is that other parent gonna teach this child how to be Black or about Blackness? And it also depends on the dad, like how deep are you into the culture? Because I do feel like a lot of couples that are interracial may not really just go into each other's culture, or one might not even accept or will stand up for the other. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it comes down to raising kids with two different cultures. It almost seems like, let's take race out of it. Let's say we marry, you put someone together that's a Christian with someone who's Jewish. It's the same thing. It's always going to be this dynamic of, do I put up a Christmas tree? Do I use whatever you call those things that they use, you know what I mean? It's always going to be that, what am I, which side, you know? And usually I feel like the one that's more prevalent is the mom's side, or, you know, whoever has custody, or if the family's still together, whatever they have decided on. But there's always going to be a back and forth. I feel like, do you ever just settle? Can you ever just have a good mix of both and be okay with it? Or is it always and especially if you're mixed with Black and white, because Black and white people have a history together that's not all that good. So I can just imagine the inner struggle of both of those, especially if you have Black family members who talk about white people negatively, or if you have white family members that talk about Black people negatively, that's going to affect you. And then that's like a whole side of you. So it's like, I know that has to be hard, but I definitely know that my kids will be like full Black. So we will not have to experience that. Me and my husband are both going to be teaching them about our culture only, but I'm sure that's a struggle.
Yeah, I can only imagine that, like you said, if there's a situation where there's no way in the scenario that you're using, like let's say the father passes away, there's no way the mother can teach that child how to be, if it's a little boy, a black man, or a person of color in today's society, or especially if it's a little girl. That's, I don't want to say almost, they're just as bad as each other, but she's never experienced the racial inequality or any type of the kind of undercut racism that I remember I was in class at SIUE, and I think it was Black Studies, and the teacher was like, how many people have been pulled over this year? And only the people of color raised their hands. And, we got in this big debate because, a lot of the Caucasian kids were like, I don't think that and we're like, girl, it was a girl that was saying it. It was like, I told her I've been pulled over like 7 times already this year. We're getting in the beginning of the year. How many times you've been put over in your life? And you think it's because what do you think it's because? Because they don't experience it. And when you don't experience it and when you don't see it, you can't say it's not there to you. So if this woman who has married outside of her culture, maybe she can sympathize, but she can never empathize. She can never say, oh, I know how it feels. She can say, I know how it looks like it feels, and she's talking to this little girl or a little boy. And if they come to her and say, Mom, I'm experiencing this, she can't even tell them how to deal with it. And she can say what she thinks,
but not coming from a place in which I've been there and this is how I learned to handle it. It would just be on some, well, I've seen this on a TV show. They did this episode about it.
Yeah. Or, I understand your plight. I get that this is happening. The best thing you can do is the same. It's no different from, I was watching this show. I forgot what it was called, but it was a woman who had children with special needs, and she says, what, and the children were high functioning special needs. And they was explaining, I can't really go to my mom and tell her what I'm feeling because she doesn't know how it feels to go through what I go through. It's the same exact concept. I can't tell you how it feels to be a white guy, and the horrible thing they're going through now with all their, this is the whole feminist thing. And they're saying that these guys are going through such a hard time, because they have, the Me Too movement and all this other nonsense. Oh my goodness, you have so hard.
Take all that money.
But I can't say I know how it feels. I don't know how it feels to be a white man. And a lot of the comedians I watch now, they're like, you can't say anything to women. You can't look at them a certain way. You can't do this. You can't do that. And even though it's funny and they are apparently going through something, and I can't downplay it because they're experiencing something. But I cannot say how they feel about it. Just like I can't say how these women who are going through what they're going, these white women who are having this Me Too movement, I can't say how they're feeling. They're experiencing something, but it's the same. Don't tell me what I'm experiencing. And then you can't have a kid and tell them what it's like to experience it and how to handle it.
Yeah.
So it's, like you said, it's a difficult situation to be in. And even for like, let's say the tables were turning, the mother passed away and you got this black dude with this, especially if the kids come out like really light skinned and he's white, I can't even imagine what he tells these kids, or even the kids, like, how come they're treating you like that, Daddy? How come they're looking at you crazy that I'm with you? Or, it's like, how do you have that conversation?
Can you imagine him trying to like take them on a plane?
Yeah. Like, are these your kids?
They'd be like, sir, we're going to have to detain you. Need to check these children. I mean, that used to happen to my sister. So my oldest sister has a mixed child. He's she has, a full black child, a mixed child, and then another full black child. So it was just him. And when she would go pick the kids up from daycare, they would give her, the boy and the girl, but the other boy, they'd be like, "Oh, he's yours too?" And she'd be like, "Yes, he's my son. Give my son," but it
Yeah.
was always a question like, "Well, are you sure?" Because, he was really light and his
Yeah.
hair texture was slightly different and still gets a little, curly and coily, but he looked different. And they would ask her
Yeah.
like, "Are you sure?" You know?
Yeah.
But you know
Yeah.
what? That brings me to our million opinions. And
Mhm.
today we're going to be talking about Kim and Kanye. Flows right into what we've been talking about because they are an interracial relationship. Kim is white and Armenian, and Kanye, of
Mhm.
course, is black. And they were raised very different. Kim comes from money. She had a famous lawyer father, and her mom is now her manager and things like that. Whereas Kanye's mom was a school teacher, and his dad actually lived in Atlanta, and he would kind of go, or Maryland, I think. But he would go back and forth between them, but he was, mostly with his mom. Now, after 6.5, almost 7 years, Kim and Kanye are getting a divorce, and there's been a lot of, public things going on in their marriage. So, they're what they're going through has been very public. So we're just going to talk a little bit about it, them being an interracial couple, them having children, and now that they're divorced, how do you think they're going to raise their children?
Of course, we never really know what's going on in people who live in the public. We never really know what's going on in their personal lives. I
Right.
do think, I will say this, I don't know how they got together in the first place because Kanye is very much, he is an entertainer. He's an entertainer, he's famous, but like you said, he comes from a normal background or not in a spotlight background where,
Humble.
yeah, where
Right.
Kim doesn't. Kim, like you said, her father was famous for the whole OJ trial and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And her mother was an entertainer too. Really, it may not have been. And so the video that we watched, I think they were doing an interview with I can't remember her name, but the interviewer, she asked them, she said, "You guys don't know how to sing, you don't dance, you don't really create anything." And it was all of the sisters and the mother there, and they answered, they're like, "Yeah, we're not talented." They know that we're not talented, but they know how to entertain, and it comes from the mother who was an entertainer.
Mm.
So how they got together in the first place, I'm not sure, because I figured Kanye would marry more somebody like I kind of thought it was going to be a Beyonce Jay-Z thing, like Beyonce and Jay-Z is a good match. They both come from humble beginnings. They both kind of built their empires from nothing. They have their personal life separate from their private life, or excuse me, they have their public life separate from their private life, where Kim's personal life has always been public ever since she
Right.
was a kid. So that's all she knows. She doesn't know about privacy. So when they first got together, I was like, I thought it was a publicity stunt. Like I thought he was trying to up his, I can get some of her viewers and we could share viewers, but apparently, but anyway, with the kids, yeah, you married someone that lives their life in the public. Their money comes from their life being on display. So when your life is on display, you have to act a certain way all the time. Whether you're a rapper, and you're a producer and you create things, but who you are as a person, most people don't know. They only see what sort of I guess the paparazzi and things like that portray you as, but you don't put your public life or your personal life in public. So yeah, she's going to want the children to go into, just like her mother taught her, this is how we made money. So of course she's going to want her children to do the same thing. And Kanye doesn't want that. Kanye's like, no, I want my kids to be, humble and be like normal kids, which unfortunately, I don't think he gets it, but you're famous. So your kids are, even if you don't want them to, even the most private people like, what's her name? She doesn't really have her kid out there, but they still find Holly Berry, you know, I rarely see her kid in the public, but they still find ways, you know, to put them there.
Well, pictures of them, but her being on social media, her having her
That's
own
true. That's true.
makeup and things like that. No, that's putting her out there.
That's
So
true.
I agree with him on his parenting stance. Also seen an interview with him on Jason Lee when he was talking about him and their divorce, and he was just basically saying everyone, when he came out and said that he bought a house across the street from Kim Kardashian, everyone thought he was crazy, like, oh, he's stalking her, he's this and that. And he's like, no, you're not going to shut down fatherhood. My kids are the number one most important thing to me. Why wouldn't I live across the street? And then he brings the example into play. He was like, when my mom decided not to be with my dad, she moved me to Chicago, the coldest city in the world, you know, the windy city. My dad didn't want to go there, so he stayed in Atlanta. So I had to go see my dad here and there, but basically my mom took me away from my dad because he didn't want to come, because she wanted to do something better for herself. She made the sacrifice she thought was best for him. But is it? You know what I mean? Taking your child away from their father. So in his case, he's like, no, I am going to buy the house across the street. And if my kids want to come and see me, they can at any time. He basically says, his home is when he's on the phone with his kids and he's able to tap in with them. He wants to be a father that's very much in their life. And the rules that he's putting into play are for their protection. His daughter does not need to be on TikTok or anything else with lipstick on and mascara and all of that. There are pedophiles out here. She got robbed in Paris. You know what I mean? Like, this is your daughter you're now putting out there to the world. I just feel like the things that he's asking for are what I feel like most Black fathers would ask for, you know. And I feel like this interracial couple, it comes down to parenting, you know. And she was raised in this family where they were always on TV and they were filmed, and, you know, I hate to say it though, but they have white privilege, you know. Black people don't have that same we don't have that same effort. So our thought process is a lot different when parenting. You know what I mean? So it's just like they're in two different worlds. And I hate to say it, but the divorce to me seemed like it was always going to happen. They always kind of seem like, you know, I do feel like he was looking for a Beyonce, but Kim is not that. Beyonce is very private. You don't know anything about her unless she wants you to know it. Now, as far as being known, yes, they're on the same level. Kim maybe even a little bit more, but the way they're known is the thing that matters. And she is known for some not so hot things. She came on the scene with a sex tape. You know, and I love Kim Kardashian. I watch this show. I always root for her. I like what she's doing in the criminal justice and getting these men and women out of jail. And like, she is fighting for us. She is on our side culturally. You know what I mean? When it comes to that. But the way she's raising her kids and this divorce with Kanye, like, I just think it's kind of sad.
But I mean, think about that. Do those really go hand in hand? You're, for lack of better words, pimping your daughter out. You know, you're allowing her to,
but they don't think of it like that because of how they were raised.
But that's what trips me out, is how can you help these common people, and you want to say you're becoming a lawyer and doing all this, but you're not a common person. We're going back to, you can't empathize with these people because you've never been in their position. Let alone, I can even understand you just being, you know, maybe you've never gone to prison or never gone to jail, never committed a crime, but you've never even just been a common, normal person. So how can you fight for somebody when you don't even half-ass know their plight, you know? And them getting married, period, it never made sense to me because they're two, and like you said, I knew after a while it wasn't going to work because they're just from two totally different worlds. And it's just what we were talking about, that big cultural difference that you didn't discuss in the beginning when we have kids. Now, on some of the episodes, I saw that she was really, I backed him, whatever he wanted. He didn't want him wearing makeup.
Yep, that's submissive and all of that.
But after a while,
she was like, I ain't doing that shit no more.
but when I kept hearing, and I would see clip, because I don't watch, me personally, I'm sorry, I don't dislike Kim. I don't have anything against her. I just don't like her. She's neutral, she's just, a person. Because I've watched one show of the Kim Kardashians, and I'm like, this is just ridiculous. I couldn't get into it. But anyway, I will say this. I think where she failed at is her family is too close knit. Her family is too close knit. They're always all together all the time. If you have a husband, then your number one priority is your husband and what he thinks. And it seems like she was kind of going that way. But when you got mama and sister in your ear, like, girl, do you? It's about your health and your, and I'm not saying that's not important. But when you have people telling you one thing and your husband telling you another, and you allow these people that you're not going to be with for the rest of your life override what you made vows to, you shouldn't have made those vows. You shouldn't have made those vows. If your dedication and your honor is to your family, stick with your family. Don't try to have dedication and honor to this man, and then you're allowing your family to, what's more important is what you think and how you feel. No, it's not. Once you marry someone, it's what you both think and what you both feel. And that should have been discussed in the beginning. Hey, when we have kids, what's it going to be? And I agree. He said that. He said, I changed. There was a quote, I became a Christian and I don't want my kids doing this.
Right.
But again, that's that whole thing we kind of talked about before. When you marry someone, you got to be in it through thick and thin. Yeah. People are going to change. People are going to change. And you have to think to yourself, am I going to be with this person no matter what changes that they go through? And if that was one of your things where, what, my family's opinions and thoughts is more important than anybody else's, you shouldn't have gotten married. I don't know who proposed to who, but that's my only caveat with her is it seems like she's always crying and having these things with her family, and then her family's telling her this stuff. Because I had to think about that when my family did it. Of course your family's going to have your back. Of course they are. They're not going to tell you anything bad or.
But sometimes when you're married, your family should. Somebody should say, hey, you need to stick it out. Maybe you should move to Wyoming. Why are you letting your husband move it to Wyoming and you ain't moving? Why can't you? You have so much money and resources. You can't tell me you can't run your internet business from Wyoming. There's no reason why you have to be in LA. And I just feel like all this makeup, no, because of exposure and because of being seen. I really feel like that's what it is. I don't even think it's the family, because I'm sure her family is not at her house all the time, every day. What we see on the show is them filming. But I'm just saying, everyone knows LA is the spot where if you go to a dinner or something, you're going to get filmed. Or if you go here, she might be dibbling, dabbling in the streets, whatever. But you are married to this man who says he wants to go to Wyoming. And he's saying he don't want y'all's kids on social media and wearing makeup. That's the life for you right there in Wyoming. I don't understand, like, how come that wasn't more of a thought? I didn't hear nobody saying, hey, you should move to Wyoming. There's nobody there. First of all, none of them are married. Even the mom ain't married. So there's no one there to even stand up for marriage in that scenario. Everyone's like, oh, girl, keep it moving. He crazy. He's bipolar. You signed up for that. And he was that from the beginning. You know what I mean? So why didn't you move to Wyoming? That's where I'm at.
But like you said, to me, it's a mix of both. It's the fact that I say the family, but your family is pushing, we need to keep our public exposure. We need to keep the money. It's about the money.
That's
the show. And it's called Keeping Up with the Kardashians, but let's just be honest, Kim is the most famous one out of all of them, at least as far as I know.
We're trying to keep up with her.
Right. I don't know any of the other ones' name except for Chloe, and I know that because of Chloe's the one who married Lamar Odom, or
she's the one that married Lamar.
Yeah. But it's just they were losing that money. That's why they were saying, oh no, stay here, stay in LA. Don't worry about
Well, he says in a bunch of interviews that there's a lot of people in her head, including her publicist and a lot of people around her. He
Exactly.
feels like the nannies be raising the kids. So there's a lot of things that have been said in regards to parenting that seems like that's kind of what broke that whole thing.
Yeah,
You know,
that's true. That's
there's
true.
a lot of cultural aspects that have to play in that as well. That just they're from two different sides of the world. You know, as far as cultures go, she's just from something different.
And that's what, you know, when we were talking about why people date outside their culture, outside their race or ethnicity, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, but they don't think about whatever the answer is, you know, whatever the answer that they have. Do you think about how it's going to affect your children, and have you discussed how you're going to raise your children? Because ultimately you have to think about their experiences in their life too, because you're passing the torch to them. You know, you've lived your life, and once you have offspring, they are you. This is your new you. You know, this is who you've made between the two of you. Your genetics have been melded into this new person, and they are living on their life, you know, and you can't not think about that. It can't just be, this person makes me feel good, I love my life, you know, we make each other, you know, it's all about love. And it is, I'm not gonna lie, it is love and trust and, you know, having commonalities and all that stuff is a factor, but it's not the most important. Knowing that you guys are going to have the same morals, and like you said, raise your children the right way, they have the same financial aptitudes and how you're going to do money and all this other stuff is a part of that too. It's just not how you feel. This person makes you feel good. You know, and that's, I think, what happened with Kim and Kanye is, at the moment, she was making him feel good, and maybe he was making her feel good, and everything was kind of blissful, but nobody really sat down and said, hey, when we have kids, you know, what are your thoughts, or what do you want to do? Because even if he wasn't a full Christian back then or whatever, he was still a private person. Yeah. And I think even back then, maybe even if he let the makeup slide, I'm pretty sure even back then he didn't want his kids being all out in because when she was doing the show, they said he was like, I don't want to be on that show. Right. You know, so why would you think he would want his kids to be out there like that? But that's just the thing. They don't care. And that's why I feel like everyone's like, just get the divorce. You'll have rights over the kids and we go from there. You know, it just seems easier. Yeah. You know, even though they're doing the joint custody or whatever, this man be everywhere. He'll be in Dubai today and here tomorrow. You know, he's out traveling the world. So it's just a hard situation. But, you know, that kind of wraps up our conversation, our million opinions on Kim and Ye. So now we're gonna do our altar call. Like we said at the beginning of the show, our altar call is just basically who we're dedicating this episode to. So shout out, please give us feedback to all the interracial couples, the people who are entertaining, maybe possibly interracial dating, and also interracial people. Tell us what you thought about tonight's episode. Give us some feedback. You can contact us right up here. I'm going to put our email address and also our Instagram name. We post questions on there. So we will be posting a question about how do you feel about interracial dating? Hit us up. We want to know what you think so we can bring that back into the show. And, you know, you guys are really just a part of it with us. Yes, most definitely. We don't know everything, you know, and I always want to get that, like she said, if there's anybody out there that is of mixed race or that's in an interracial relationship, we said it ourselves. We haven't really been in one, so we don't know the answers and we want to know. So if you have any input, well, I did it for this, I did it for that, or, you know, I'm of mixed race and this is what I, you know, go through. We want to know that. We want to add that type of information and input to our show because we can't talk about things that we don't know about. That's why it's our opinion and what we think. That is so true. And so that kind of concludes our episode today. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you thought this was super interesting and you will come back next week where we'll have another good topic for y'all. And, you know, that's it. Get into it. All right, everybody. Well, we will see you guys next week. Tune in, please. And don't forget to hit us up and let us know what you think.
That's right. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Bye.
Bye.